This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content, and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
There will be spoilers in this episode, specifically from ACOTAR, ACOFAS, The Boys, Doctor Who, 50 Shades, True Blood, the Throne of Glass series, Crescent City, and Six of Crows, as well as some conversations surrounding sexual assault.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into YA literature and the fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we're talking about our current reads, what we've read, what we like, what we don't like, and what we're excited to read. This week, we're also touching on the value of fluff to soothe the soul and our opinions on the ultimate fluff, A Court of Frost and Starlight. We'll also be discussing Silver Flames because why shouldn't we speculate? What else are we going to do during a pandemic?
Probably just go down the TikTok rabbit hole because that's what I've been doing since January of last year. So
have you found anything good?
For TikToks, I mean, I found the book talk community, which I don't know if I could say they've embraced me, but I've totally embraced them. I love commenting. And then I found myself, I think of it like of a transmedia experience because then I go from TikTok and then I go from TikTok, they're posting their Instagram pages and then I'm going to the Instagram pages and then now it's just a spiral because I follow them on the personal account and then I also started following them on our ACOFAE account. So I feel like I'm double fisting all the glory for all the content creators.
Oh, that's okay. We want to support as many people as we can. And if that takes our personal account and this account too, well, then that's fine.
I feel bad for Laura because sometimes she's just getting random DMs on her personal account from both of our pages. So I'm like, ooh, this person posted something. This one has somebody. I'm so excited. Everybody just keeps stepping up their game, just especially with the fan art. Just when you think it's not going to, it can't get better, it somehow gets better. I'm so excited of the purchase that came out with the December release for the A Touch of Magic AU account with the 3 Illyrian babies playing in the snow. And I think I also really liked it because speaking of current reads, I reread Frost and Starlight for this episode. So there's some fresh insight that I was able to take away from that I wasn't as emotionally invested anymore because let's face it, it's not the best of the books. So
but save that, we'll get into that because right now let's start with our current reads. I'll go first. The best read that I've had so far has been the Blood and Ash Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by JLA. Those are pretty fantastic, though I have to say Blood and Ash isn't awesome. I got it because it was all over Book Talk and it was supposed to be very spicy. And I was like, okay, I'm here for spice. And it just didn't deliver until the end. And I was like, okay, well, I'll read the sequel. And damn, the sequel is everything I wanted and more. The cliffhanger, fantastic. I'm so excited for April. I don't love the characters. I know some people love the characters. I don't love them, but I like the story. It is unexpected and really interesting. So that was probably the best current read that I've had. The worst current read that I had is a tie, I guess, between Deadly Education by Naomi Novik and the Second Born series by Amy A. Bartol. You and I have discussed trash books and what a trash book is to you. What a trash book is to me is essentially the Second Born series from Amy A. Bartol because, oh my God, it's fine, but it's bad.
Is it bad? The writing, the plot, is it trash because it's a guilty pleasure? Because I consider my contemporary romance trash because of the stigma that comes along with romance. But I say it in a loving way. I love a bad Hallmark movie, a bad Christmas movie. You know what's going to happen. You get your happily ever after. And it's so cheesy and you just know. And I usually used to, prior to the fantasy sci-fi of it all, would just bathe in it. Like, especially in the beginning of this year, you knew I was all about my Stiletto series, the Stiletto Oxford series, where it's all, 20, 30 somethings living their best life in New York with no budget whatsoever. I mean, that was like, it's me in 5 years. That was my crack. And now it's different. So what do you consider trash?
Books that are skewed young. So like on the younger end of YA, but they still say like fuck. And the plot goes from it's one thing, and then all of a sudden they're all reincarnated gods and goddesses, and there's a robot army taking over the world, and you're just like, what?
How very Dalek.
Yeah, it's really and they're beaming their subconscious into clone bodies that they've grown in a secret underwater lab, and it just keeps going and going and going and just getting more and more out there, and that is trash to me.
It doesn't even seem cohesive anymore.
Yeah, no, it's just like, where is the original? There's a TikTok about it. It's like, where did we lose the plot?
Was there ever a plot?
So that is what trash is to me. I have two more current reads, and that is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. Not great. It had potential, but it wasn't great. And then I reread Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare because I needed something to cleanse the palate after all of that.
Well, I guess for my current reads, I did specifically what I read this week. I think I've said I'm a speed reader. I think I'm at 80 books so far for 2020. So this particular week, I went outside of the genre that I used to read a lot, and just something different. It's something that everybody from Book Talk has really been talking about, was A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It was only 11 hours from an audio perspective. It took me the entire week. I couldn't get into it. And then finally, like halfway through, I was able to get in. And I think that's just, even though I love Greek mythology, the prose was different from what I was used to reading. Especially when I come from fluff or fantasy of it all. But it was still written so beautifully. And there's something to be said with a true Greek tragedy. I was just so sad for these two people, for Achilles and Patroclus. I can't say his name correctly, but it's nice to see the intimacy of the relationship and how it was written. It was just there was a depth to it between the two characters, which I thought was very nice, but also very sad at the end, as most Greek tragedies. From there, I immediately went to Normal People by Sally Rooney. I had a coworker recommend that book to me, and it just became available at the library. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then that was another 7-hour book, supposed to be an easy read, but it's very dark and the topics were really heavy. I wish it came with a trigger warning because of how emotionally intense the subjects were. And even at the end of the book, I just kind of stopped and I go, wait, that's how it ended? I'm so used to everything being tied up with a nice little, bow. And then we'll go to Roomies, which is a Christina Lauren book, who I like the authors, but it was so bad. And it was the only reason I didn't give it a 1-star on Goodreads, Laura, I told you this, is because I only reserve my 1-star ratings for my DNFs. And I finished it. It was so bad. And I'm sure some people love it because some people actively talk on Instagram like, oh, this is my favorite book, it's a good reread. It shouldn't be anybody's reread. It was the I'm going to marry you because I need a green card trope.
Oh, it's that one.
Yeah, it was so bad. And then we're gonna fall in love. And it had everything I would have. Laura likes to affectionately call me, is this something that pre-ACOTAR Jess would like or post-ACOTAR? And pre-ACOTAR just wants or didn't care about depth. And now I just want more. And I told her, I go, look, even pre-ACOTAR just wouldn't have been happy with this book. And it has everything I would have liked previously. It takes place in the city. Her uncles are head of Broadway producers and creative directors. I mean, I knew where she lived when she's like, oh yeah, I'm in Hell's Kitchen off 57th. I mean, everything was there that I would have liked, but it just wasn't there. So at least I got to bounce that out and wrap the whole week up with rereading Frost and Starlight, which, you know, nobody's saying it's a good book, but it's what I need. I'm sure some of the other readers are like, I just needed something light when I came off of ACOWAR. So to go back into Frost and Starlight, to be happy and be like, oh, I'm with the fam. It was nice to feel like I was home for a little bit. I don't know. I sound so geeky about it, but I love the inner court. I love it so much.
That's fair. That's fair. I do think that because people were so invested in ACOWAR, going from that and expecting something fantastic from A Court of Frost and Starlight, people were disappointed. I personally didn't feel like it was Sarah's writing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I felt like she was like telling someone loose concepts and then somebody else was writing it. It just didn't seem like her.
I feel like there are fanfic writers out there who would have, done a better job. And I mean, we'll go into some fanfics about the topic of fanfics later in this episode. I know we wanted to discuss further, but you have some, not only would they have been written better, but you just have some writers who you read it and you're like, no, that they totally captivated that character. They know that character. And I feel like you could have a rewrite of Frost and Starlight with a fanfic writer who understands these characters, and we as a community probably would have been like, this is what Frost and Starlight could have been. And for all I know, there's one out there. I haven't gone down the fanfic rabbit hole of the ACOTAR series or any. I haven't touched a fanfic aside from Elicity since 2015. And I feel like that's its own like Fanfics Anonymous addiction group or something I should have been in.
That's fair. You have the most recent memory because you just finished this.
Right.
So right off the bat, what are your feelings? What do you think? Like, we know it's not good, but
I don't know. I feel like rereading it gets me excited for Silver Flames, what's to come. And I say that just because you have the shift of narrative. You have like each chapter is based on a person's perspective, which Sarah has already openly said, like, we're going to have Nesta and Cassian's perspective. So I think that transition is important, especially if people haven't explored Frost and Starlight yet. I mean, we see a bit of it at the end, not even a bit, like we see two specific instances that I could think of is at the end of ACOMAF, where the last chapter goes into Reese's perspective because Feyre's over at the Spring Court. And then you see it at the intro of ACOWAR, where again, it's Reese's perspective after the first war 500 years ago, or like I guess 420 or 80 years ago or something. So I think we have that exposure, but understanding a little bit more of the characters, I think that was important just from a Frost and Starlight perspective. I don't know beyond that. I mean, like I said, I think it's 100% fluff. Is it necessary to read it? I almost, even though it's a novella, I feel like you need that background going into it because you start seeing the dynamic more of the characters with each other that wasn't already established in like life or death situations, which, that's what they're getting out of. And that's even what Silver Flames is supposed to be with the description is, okay, here's the aftermath. So Silver Flames is an immediate aftermath of what's still happening and how people are healing and leading into that.
I think one of my biggest issues with Frost and Starlight is, we'll talk about it, but is the pregnancy thing. So I'm not talking about the pregnancy kink, that's later.
Oh,
what I'm talking about is when Feyre is in the gallery and she sees the tapestry and there's the void, black and the silver, and it shimmers, and she's talking to the artist and she's like, I lost my husband and I didn't have any part of him to keep. And, I feel like empty and dead inside. And Feyre's like, and a light goes off inside Feyre. And she's like, oh, well, we should try for a baby now because I want to have a piece of Rhys no matter what happens. And that really felt forced to me, and it felt out of character to me because Feyre spends a lot of time in ACOMAF after they're mated being like, I just want to live. I want to live my life. I don't want to worry about kids yet. It's just, I want to spend time with you. And then all of a sudden, they go through ACO War, and then immediately after she's like, no, I want to have a baby now.
It hasn't even been a year. And that was one thing that I forgot about in Frost and Starlight, where she goes, oh, a year ago. She wasn't even, they're celebrating winter solstice. And she goes, she wasn't even with Rhys. She hasn't even been with Rhys a year. And everybody focuses on chapter 55 and ACOMAF for smut. And I use the term loosely because like Frost and Starlight, I just finished the part where they're back at the cabin. Mm. And that's smuttier than chapter 55.
Very smutty.
But at the end of chapter 55, like you said, they're about, I just want to live. Like things are finally clicking into place for her. She's finally found where she belongs. She has this sense of ownership in herself and her powers and what she brings to the table. And this is before even like her powers are fully, she's fully controlling them with the whole Hybern attack on Valeris. She's just coming into her sense of self. And also, bitch, you're 21. And no shade to young parents out there. Everybody has different things going on with them. But at this point in her life at 21, she was just finding herself. And you're continuously finding yourself. And they also, look how good Rhys looks. And he's 500 years old. You have a lifetime. And I like in the extra chapter in my copy of Frost and Starlight, there's that extra chapter of what's supposed to go into Silver Flames, where Nesta keeps turning down all these job opportunities. And part of the reason is she goes, I have my whole life. If I want to kind of just sleep around and do whatever I want, I'll work later. Like times there's no rush in a sense of time right now. And that's interesting to see that different perspective too, where Nesta's like, I have all the time in the world. I'll get to working when I can, when I want to. So that is an interesting take that you bring up, aside from the reasons and the timing and everything. I think that's a good point.
Another complaint that I have about Frost and Starlight is the focus on the drudgery of like running a territory. I don't want to say kingdom because Rhys and Feyre aren't kings, they're, High Lady and High Lord, but the focus on the desk being so cluttered and having to answer all the letters, and then Rhys, in the beginning he's at the Illyrian camp with Cassia, and he's just like, basically, I just want to be, I think he says, buried in Feyre.
That's exactly
all I want.
Or that like, oh, life is so hard. I haven't slept with my wife in like a couple days or something.
Yeah. And he's like, my control slipped and we ended up having sex in the sky. Like, what?
Which I logistically had to be I'm going to spoil kind of this. If you guys watch The Boys, here's a spoiler from The Boys. There's an episode in The Boys where Homelander has floating sex, sky sex with another character. I'm not going to say who if you haven't watched it yet. But the whole time I'm like, oh, so that's how they did. Like, I wasn't even thinking of The Boys at that point. I was thinking of Feyre and Rhys. And that's how much the series has integrated into my life, that here I am watching a superhero show. And I'm like, that's logistically how
it's one of those really crazy things. And, was it necessary? No. Is it amusing? Yeah, kind of.
I don't know. I mean, the crashing on the roof, that would hurt me. Like, not just my back, but like other parts would be like, ow.
Yeah. And like, yes, it's a fantasy, you have to just roll with it at some point. But when the author is taking so much time to, focus on these things, then, I can suspend my disbelief just so far when you're making sure that I'm worrying about, well, does she have time to answer all the letters? And they had to listen to, like an open court where people come and like voice their complaints. And there's a whole couple pages about how Feyre started asking questions about the complaints and how they're, running the kingdom together. It's like, and I understand that there has to be some sort of focus on this because, the war as we know it is over. They're trying to get back to normal life. But also it bothers me. It's like, if you're gonna bitch about it, and she's like, I know that we're wealthy. We can just hire secretaries. It's like, screw you. Like, I would love to be doing this.
Yeah.
And you're just like bitching about it. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. The tone was off.
And maybe that comes from just both of our personalities where we're both very ambitious and career driven. And we've had this conversation with Doctor Who saying like, you don't question it. You run. You don't question the opportunity. You embrace every single thing that's going to be handed to you and you hold on to it in every capacity. And when she's complaining about this stuff, I think of that TikTok where he's that guy, he's like, like, you think I give a fuck? Like, I don't. You want me to feel sorry for you? You have, not only do you have the most attractive person ever, you have like your mate in the truest sense of the word. The adoration, not just like the adoration, but like in every capacity, right? And she's just like, oh, work so hard. And now, okay, like maybe she's complaining about it and she didn't have the estate then, but he literally says, here's some free property. We'll build it to however you want. Give you an office, give me an office, give you a painting studio. Make sure it has a closet big enough for more. Make sure it has a great garden space for your sister because your sister's obviously going to stay with us. Like make sure we have nurseries, make sure we have rooms for our brothers. Like this is going to be our compound basically for our whole family. It's just, and you just be like, oh, there's so much paperwork. And it's not even like actual work. I mean, not to discredit what she's doing, but literally, if they said Cassian did it at the Illyrian camps, he goes, here's some money. Let me buy all your coats because the money's there and give it to the people who need it. It's the same thing. Just and maybe this happens also because I'm used to it with work. It's throw money at the problem, get it taken care of. Like, you have it.
Yeah. I mean, you have everything in the world and you're complaining about the minutia. And then, you're right. He did give her the whole estate to plan. And then she wants to get pregnant on top of that. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Rereading it today, I got a lot of Christian Grey vibes. When he buys Anna that thing and she just like guts it basically and just keeps the frame where she's like, I want the natural woodwork, but like we can basically demolish all the walls and make everything glass. And then they create their sex dungeon and all that stuff.
To be honest, no, I don't remember that from Christian Grey because there's only very specific things that I remember. And the architecture is not one of them.
Oh, man.
I do remember that she forgot to take her mini birth control pill at the same time every day. She ignored her alarm and then she immediately got pregnant.
No, she was getting like the depot shot and they told her, yeah. And they said like, it'll be effective between 6 to 8 weeks. You have to like get it redone every 6 to 8 weeks, but it was ineffective after 4 weeks. So that was part of like my thing. I was like, it wasn't even the full 6 weeks. Like, why are we blaming Anna? And also to complain at this game because I mean, granted, that's the real world, but Rhys was taking his male contraceptive.
Which is a good transition into the alleged pregnancy kink that just casts a shadow over this entire book.
People just say things to say things because I don't see it as that.
I also do not see it as Rhys's pregnancy kink for a couple of reasons. One, because oh my God, I'm not gonna think about him that way. Oh my God. I just can't. And also two, I think in the context of it being solstice, it being Feyre's birthday and like gift giving, I see it as Feyre giving him the gift of, yes, I'm ready to start having a family.
Yes.
Which is what he wanted, this whole time he said in ACOMAF, like, if you give me children, I'll be the happiest male alive, but it's not necessary.
Right. And I think that's important to say because it's not like their relationship didn't hang in the balance of are they having kids or not. He's like, this is your choice. Basically, if you, how he says, you don't have to do anything in ACOMAF when she's like, oh, well, if I'm your mate, like I have to bear you kids. And he was like, whoa, you do not have to do anything. And I think that's important to say because is this great? Yeah, but he still would have been just as happy with Feyre if Feyre chose not to say like, look, I don't want to have kids. I just want to have a life with you. I just want to explore. I just want to go on adventures. I want it to be us. And he still would have been so happy if it was just their family, their found family that they created. I don't understand why. I don't understand. Sometimes I think people just put things out there with no validity.
Which is true. Although on the other side of that, there are, kinks in Sarah's books. We got toes in Crescent City. We got the biting in Throne of Glass.
Oh, that's why. Because I was just going to say, there was a part in Frost and Starlight where he goes, Feyre, in the Feyre's chapter, she goes, oh, he nipped at me. And then I was thinking of how we were going to talk about the biting kink. And I go, is it really biting? Because I feel like some people just bite or nibble or give hickeys or whatever. Or is it like a Vampire Diaries True Blood thing? I don't know. I don't know how I was supposed to take it. I do remember I was watching a medical show the other day and the femoral artery was bleeding. And the only thing I knew about the femoral artery, I was like, oh, that's a good place for vampires to bite because it bleeds excessively. And I only know that from season 3 of True Blood.
It's interesting that you bring that up specifically. I'll touch back to A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, where that is discussed in detail. All of the very special places.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, it is. It's quite something. Specifically in regards to Throne of Glass, it is not a sexy vampire thing. It is a claiming.
Oh,
it's a claiming thing, and it's a kink.
Oh, it is a kink.
But it's like not overtly sexual until they make it that way.
Okay.
And then Hunt wants to suck all of Bryce's toes.
It's so specific, the toe thing. Like I've never looked at a male's toes and thought, ooh.
But we're not kink shaming.
We're not kink shaming. I'm just saying for me, like it just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. Although I have to think that out of everyone, Hunt would have very nice toes. If we're going to go that way, if you had to suck anyone's toes in the Crescent City universe, then Hunt's would probably be the safest to go to.
I feel like I'm going to have I'm going to overly think about this for other side characters because now I'm thinking of Therion and I know he's a merman, but then I'm thinking like, well, what if it's like an Ariel thing where he eventually gets legs? Are they pruny because he's in the water?
Oh man. Right off the deep end here. I love it.
Spiral. I'm just gonna.
All right, no, let's pull it in.
All right. Whew.
Pull it in. All right, so now let's talk about what everyone really cares about when it comes to Frost and Starlight.
The box. What's in the box?
What could possibly be in the box? Of course, we're talking about the solstice gift that Cassian wants to give Nesta when he walks her home after the dinner, and they end up fighting, and he chucks it into the river.
I feel like I've seen a fan theory, but after rereading it the other day, I initially thought the fan theory was he had been looking for this for months, all this stuff. And I saw a fan theory saying that they think it's some sort of siphon, like Cassian and Az have with their powers. And because we know that Nesta has like a lot of powers, even though nobody really knows how to control it, herself included, I thought that was an interesting theory. but I don't know how difficult, if he's saying like it's taken him months, how difficult is it to get the specifics, like this siphon, if all the other Illyrians have it when they're training, and, you know, and all the other Illyrians have like one siphon, and meanwhile, Az and Cassian have 7. So I don't know if that's it. Also, if it was a siphon like that, they made it a point to say like, that Cassian didn't want to give the gift in front of everybody. He just wanted to go to Nesta one-on-one. And I feel like if it was a siphon, he could have given it to her and just kind of been blasé about it, to say like, oh yeah, here's another gift for you, Nesta. And then just continued on doing their solstice activities. So it could be like, it's not that big of a deal, because if it was a siphon, I kind of feel like it wouldn't need to be this one-on-one thing, because it kind of benefits everybody too and helps her understand. And Amryn would be like, oh, that's great. I'll totally like, well, they're, you know, her and Amryn are the closest out of everybody. There would be guidance there. So that's my thought on the box. But I do know that we find out what was in the box, according to Sarah.
Which, thank God, because it is just incredible. And to kind of jump off from there, I know we will find out what's in the box. Sarah has said so. But I kind of want to touch on the cover.
Okay.
The cover for Silver Flames. I do not, and I cannot, and I could not understand the absolute hate that cover got when it came out. People lost their fucking minds. And I just don't understand it. You know, we're a book talk community. You're not supposed to judge a book by its cover. And holy shit, that is all anyone did.
And how awful was it? And I know that this is, you know, this podcast is being aired in January and the cover's been out for some time, but how awful is it that, one, you find out that not just the author doesn't have a say in the cover, but 2, the person who took that time to create that. I mean, we're the last community who should be judging anybody, honestly. I mean, not only with the expression don't judge a book by its cover, but people who do read have our own challenges that we're being judged on a regular basis. And all of a sudden, who gives us the right to judge other people? I thought that was so terrible. And me coming into this community fairly late in the game, I've never seen so much aggression. And I'm part of other fandoms. And I have, and I'll say specifically Lady Gaga, you know, I've been a huge Lady Gaga fan for like 15 years, it feels like now. The whole, like, if we don't like something, there are people who are super vocal on Twitter, but I have my group chat with my friends, and we just say like, this is shit. Like, can't you just be normal and not put that hate online and just keep it amongst your close friends? Like, not everybody's opinion needs to be a public thing, you know. Hate festers, like that negativity that breeds more negativity. And I feel like it just snowballed with that cover. And honestly, I like it. It matches the new covers. It wasn't the best, but I didn't hate it. I was just like, this is interesting. There's a lot to unpack here that we don't know yet. And the thing that came to mind, I mean, I will say, in regards to masks specifically, I'm like, ooh, that's a trigger warning for, you know, season, you know, for the first book, or at least the people of Prythian. And then I felt it was more maybe leaning more towards Lucian because of the colors. And then you also have a day court insignia on the mask. So that's the things that stand out for me right now.
And also, you know, everything can stand out, whatever, but like, we don't know. And, you know, just when Crescent City came out, there is so much in the Crescent City cover that we just had no idea about, but people weren't melting down over that because it was the first in the series and, you know, da-da-da-da-da.
I still don't understand the Raven, except for the bar. That's like, I still don't understand the Raven with everything.
If you do understand the Raven, please comment.
Please. Oh, please, somebody tell me, because even when I go on Etsy, they have the crescent moon and the Raven and it's on the cover. It's on everything, but I don't know the importance, and I would really want to understand more. So please help.
Please check out our socials under this episode and please tell us what the Raven is, because we can't figure it out. That being said, watching people that I respect in the book talk community melt down over this book cover really left a bad taste in my mouth. And I feel like it's a good jump to talk about what being toxic is and what that means in just kind of all of literature, but also the difference between male toxicity and, I'll be very clear, and Nesta, and what that kind of brings to this series.
For those who may not know fully, and we'll use male toxicity and toxic masculinity interchangeably, but it typically refers to traditional cultural masculine norms that can be harmful to men, women, and society overall. Toxic masculinity is defined by like an adherence to traditional male gender roles that are consequently stigmatized to, limit emotions in boys and men. And we're finding it being used incorrectly on Book Talk a lot, like Laura said. And I think people use the word toxic and damaged synonymously with each other, especially on Book Talk, which isn't always the case. You can be damaged, but not toxic. And I don't like toxic men. I mean, Laura, like I've dated the most boring guy in the world, but I've learned I like someone with depth, and maybe with that depth comes with a level of damage. And especially at our age, if we're not all a little damaged, like that's going to be my red flag. Like, for example, I don't agree with Reese being toxic at all. And I'm sure that there will be other males in this fantasy journey that I'm not going to feel that they're toxic either. If they're damaged, that doesn't make you toxic.
No, I agree completely. I don't think that Reese is toxic. And I know that kind of because he has his redemption arc and we understand the motives behind everything that he did in ACOTAR and ACOMAF, that we don't really see him as toxic. He is incredibly damaged, but there are people out there that do, that say, just because he gives Feyre a choice, like that's the bare minimum. And, we should set our standards higher for that. And also he did, drug and touch Feyre without her consent. It's a slippery slope. Also, I really love the Folk of the Air series. I've said that before. People say that Cardan is very toxic. I think he's a good example of being incredibly damaged and that coming off as toxic. And I have just finished the King of Elfhelm and how he learned to hate stories, and we get a little bit more about his background and how he was incredibly damaged and how, yes, that could come out as toxic. So when we're talking about book characters, I will say that I like toxic characters because, as you said, it gives them more depth and it makes them a little bit more interesting, but only because in the book community, toxic and damage, as you said, are used interchangeably. That I also am thinking of Kaz in Six of Crows. I would say he's a little bit more toxic, but he is also incredibly damaged and suffering from PTSD and so many other things. Those characters have more oomph, I feel like, behind them instead of just a straight up good or bad character.
And there's something to be said because every example that you just gave, we are using the pronoun of he. And there is a lot of Nesta hate out there, but there's also a lot of Nesta love. And I'm just thinking recently with the Frost and Starlight at the beginning of the book, Reese and Feyre are talking. And Reese is, saying like, we like Elaine, but like, I still blame Nesta. And Feyre's like, you can't blame one and not the other. If you're going to blame one, you got to blame both. And Reese says, well, Elaine is Elaine and Nesta is Illyrian. She's an Illyrian at heart. And I think it's interesting that everybody, wants to hate on Nesta. And she has, I'm not saying that she's great. Like, I'm not like, woo, Team Nesta. I'm interested to know more about her, but it's very interesting to discuss that you have these characters that, you're saying Kaz and Cardan and Reese and, a slew of other people. They have these redemption arcs and they're damaged and they have PTSD. Well, no, like you have people who are not necessarily giving that same defense to Nesta. And you can argue that like, well, is Reese being Team Elaine because she's soft and demure and, she's within the confines of the expectations of femininity?
No, exactly right. And we know that Nesta is suffering from severe PTSD. Just this scene when she's in her apartment and she lights a fire and she is hearing the crackling of the fire, but all she can really hear is her father's neck snapping and she's not feeling anything.
Or in the extra chapter in Frost and Starlight, it's hard for her to take a bath because she's having the PTSD of being submerged in the cauldron.
Absolutely. And as you said, like, Nesta is not the easiest character to like. In my opinion, she starts off shitty and she just gets shittier.
And Sarah confirms it. Sarah confirms it even with Silver Flames. She says she doesn't, it's not like Silver Flames comes along and she goes, she's still shitty for most of the book.
Yeah, which is fair. And I would be upset if she weren't, because that would be such a drastic departure from her character. But Nesta is very strong. We know that. We know that she has a lot of power, but we also know that she's very strong just from the example of her not being able to have her mind influenced by Tamlin when he came to, set everything right after Feyre was gone. She went to look for Feyre. She knew that something was wrong.
And even within the cauldron, like she didn't let she wasn't complacent in the actions of the cauldron. She's like, you're going to do this shit. I'm going to give it right back to you. And she has always been very strong-willed since the beginning, to the point where even in the first book, she goes, what's the expression? I'll cut my nose to spite my face. And she was willing to let her family suffer because her dad wasn't providing. And that included letting her baby sister go hunting for them at 14.
Absolutely. That is such a good point. And it is a good segue to just kind of talk about what do we think we're going to get with Silver Flames. We're going to get bitchy Nesta. We know this. It's been confirmed. We're going to get, sassy, sexy Cassian. We also know this.
The enemies and I can't even say they're enemies to lovers. It's like enemies, lovers, enemies. Like it's a double because it's the enemies since ACOMAF, the lovers of ACOFAR, then enemies of ACOFAS. And there's so much to unload.
I think we should start with Wings and Embers.
That was the ACOMAF, like an extra chapter.
The extra, yeah.
Oh, yes.
I think we should start there because it really plays up the chemistry that is between Nesta and Cassian, and it makes you excited for what Silver Flames could be. So if you're unfamiliar, it's basically just a few pages where Cassian comes to the house that the sisters are living in. This is before Nesta is Fae, but after Rhys and Feyre are in the Night Court.
Yeah, they're in the Night Court, but they're not mated yet. And Cassian makes a point. He's like, nobody understands how hard it is to be under the roof of two people who are mated, and they're not acknowledging this to each other. Like, this is like, he's just going like, the hormones.
Right. So, and Cassian admits that he has this pull to Nesta, and Nesta has a pull to Cassian too. There's a very sexy scene where they're like leaning, there's like a wall that Nesta's on, and Cassian has his arms around her head, and her body's like curving into his, and she's exposing her neck.
Oh, and then he kisses, like it's not just an exposure, like he kisses her neck. There is physical interaction there, mm-hmm. and a physical response too, and this has been happening since before she was even Fae. He saw her and he was like, shit, my life is done.
And also, trigger warning, Nesta talks about, and it's not exactly clear if it was a rape or if it didn't get that far, but she says to Cassian, basically, something happened and I was in a situation that was not good, and it makes me not really trust men. And Cassian's like, immediately, who is this guy? I'm gonna murder this guy. I would do it for anyone, and I will do it for you. And Nesta says, in her like perspective, she's like, and I knew he would do it for anyone, but the fact that he would do it for me, it meant something to her, but she is unable to express these feelings.
And that's something I just want to put that poor girl in front of a shrink. Like, she needs to talk so much shit out, because she wasn't raped, but there was an assault there that scared her, because then he was asking her if she was a virgin, and she's like, what's it to you? And eventually that carries over into the high, being high fae and everything. She just has so much to unpack. And I mean, maybe that she doesn't know about physical touch as a love language either, because she didn't get it from her dad. Her mom died. She obviously wasn't, she didn't have any trustworthy experiences. And she shared a bed with her sisters. Like, something's really going to happen there, She's had to keep a wall up for so long as a sense of just to be protective. Like, since she's the oldest and since day one, she's had to keep a wall up because it was never about her.
Right. And now, I say now, but after she's made Fae and in Frost and Starlight, it is well known that Nesta chooses to live in like the slummy part of town, as much as there is a slum in Valeris, and that she is just like screwing randos all the time and just like
no shame. We're not shaming anybody who does.
No shame at all. It's interesting that she knows that she has a connection with Cassian. She knows that he would respect her, and she knows that there could be such an intimacy there. And she is so damaged that she can't go there yet. I mean, this is all speculation.
And I think there's something to be said about people who have their feelings locked up or even are survivors of sexual assault, and we always talk about like there's a fork in the road. There's always, and I'm not just saying like there's only one of two choices. There's multiple choices, but you do have people who seek out that affection, or who might necessarily go down, decide, what, like, I'm going to take ownership of my sexuality. Like, I'm not just a victim. I'm a survivor. I'm going to go ahead and have, multiple partners because I am in control of my sexuality. There's also another option where you can still have control of your sexuality, but you make it a point to say, it's not going to be everybody and anyone. I'm going to be more actively conscious of who I decide to share this with, because I, again, am still in control of this situation, of my body. I'm not going to open it to either way. You're both in control of this. You're still in control of both situations. It's just how certain people may address the experiences that they've unfortunately have had happen. And I'm not saying this from like a, disclaimer, like I'm not a professional. I'm just saying this out of, conversations that I've had and things that I've read and my own personal experiences. Like there's different ways and avenues how people handle their emotions, more or less.
No, you're absolutely right. And just to kind of split from this, I started to reread Frost and Starlight, and I couldn't get through it. But I did kind of catch on Sarah's description of Nesta as a queen.
Yes.
She's used that several times. Her back is ramrod straight. She has a crown. Her braid is like a crown. She looks down her nose at people. She's like a queen.
It's not just in ACOFAS. It's mentioned in ACOWAR too, I think, like just since the changing into Fae.
The changing, right. So since we're speculating about Silver Flames, do we think that she will become an Illyrian queen? Is that something that might be on the table? An Illyrian warrior queen with Cassian as her king?
I'm not against it. Oh, I remember something that, and I mean, it wasn't a gift to her, but it gave me such queen vibes that Cassian gifted Feyre a leather sheath for her sword, like a true warrior or something. And I immediately had the image of Gal as Wonder Woman in the first movie, where she was in that blue dress and she has the mascara sword like down her. And I had that image, but I wasn't picturing Feyre. I was picturing Nesta. And I can see that. And it would be also interesting because the Illyrian war camp specifically is one of the only, if not the only camp that has women as part of their warriors. And she's totally, and I mean, and we know this is a spoiler if you haven't read the extra chapter at the end of ACOFAS, but she's going to the Illyrian mountains. She's going to train. She needs to train, just if anything, to get out her frustrations. And I think that's going to be something interesting to explore, because there is a sense of control and power, which Nesta obviously needs. And Amryn makes comments, I can't think of specific ones, discussing about how she's stronger than everybody and she has this great power, especially from coming out of the cauldron, and Amryn knowing that she connected with Nesta on a very cellular level, but didn't know why. And even the silver eyes, like nobody has silver eyes except for Amryn. Like there's something deeper there that we get to explore, or not us necessarily, but Sarah definitely did, that we are going to, I feel like Silver Flames is going to be Crescent City in the sense of everyone's going to just speed read through it. We've been thirsting for so much, and we're going to read it. We're going to have a reaction podcast for like an immediate reaction. And then I feel like then we're going to have to sit with it and do a reread to fully digest everything that's thrown at us. And I was thinking about that last night. I was just thinking, oh, it'll be really interesting to readdress all of this, because you do want to just like suck it all up and like a sponge, and you have to sit with it, because then you're going to be like, oh my God, it's over. And you're going to have to, there's going to be stuff that we missed. There's going to be stuff that we need to dive deeper on. There's a lot to unpack, I feel, that we don't even know yet.
Exactly, that we don't even know yet. But speaking on things that we do know that the next book is most likely going to be about Az. And we do know.
Oh, I know where we're going with this. I'm sorry.
Because Sarah told us that Big Daddy Azrael is a freak in bed.
And the best, like not in a negative shaming way, like, oh my, not like Freaks and Geeks show from forever ago. It is, that is hot.
So much so that she daydreams about it.
She had that, when she was on her Instagram live with Steph, she was just like, she was physically like, I can't, just thinking about it. She was so excited about it. And Lauren, you and I have had this conversation where we go, okay, like, yeah, she's having her Cassian stuff out, and I go, she likes Cassian. She dreams about as we all do.
Don't we all?
There's just a lot to be said there. I'll tell you what, I feel like my TikTok FYP heard me listening to that podcast, because all of a sudden, as Kink Talk showed up on my FYP, and I go, I didn't even know this stuff existed.
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh, does it?
As Kink Talk is there, according to the fans, Az likes knife play, so he's freaky with the knives. We're all here for it.
I didn't know knife play was a thing until The Wicked King.
The things that YA can teach even us is astonishing.
These Gen Z kids, they're going to be graduating high school with a lot more knowledge than I don't even know what. But I also, speaking of an Az book, I love collectively as a fandom, when everybody heard the corpse human, his voice, it was an immediate, I go, that's Az's voice. And then you go on to Book Talk, and everybody, you go, I didn't even have to pass the memo. Everybody just knew. And that's why I like that choked me so.
You knew immediately.
And then that became synonymous with Az. And then Sarah said what she said, and everybody knew. Everybody just knew, but it felt so validating. Because you were sleeping, I was watching it live, and I screamed. My poor neighbors, they're probably thinking, I have no idea what they're thinking. I just screamed. I was like, oh my God, it's true. Oh my goodness. And then I think of the updated Book Talk. So they do the little voice or the little cutesy bats of the corpse human song. Oh man, we won't. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, so I'm not even going to go into it.
Everybody knows. So when we're speaking on Az, and we know that his book is the next book. So let's circle back to Frost and Starlight and talk about the one. It's not even a paragraph. It's like a line in Frost and Starlight where Az and Reese are speaking about buying a solstice gift for her. And Reese says, put it on my account. And he goes, I know he won't, but. And then TikTok really ran with this out of nowhere. And there's speculation that the her is so many people. It's Reese's sister.
We see, and that's interesting because after rereading Frost and Starlight, there's a part, and Reese goes back to Tamlin for a second time. And Tamlin's like, do you think she'll ever forgive me? And Reese is like, I don't fucking know. He basically talks about, here you are, and I killed your mother, your sister. I had their wings in my study. Like, I delivered their heads in a box. So I'm really interested to see, it's a snowball effect. Somebody says, oh, what if the her is Reese's sister? And then everybody just kind of goes with it. I assumed that the her was Azriel's mom.
So did I.
So I don't know where the sister came into it all. Oh, and speaking of, or not only is it Reese's sister, there's the speculation that's his sister, Azriel's mate. I had a question I wanted to ask you in regarding mates is, so we know Lucian, like Lucian is mated to Elaine. Elaine, as we know, can still turn down the mate. She doesn't have to accept the mating bond. If you turn down a mate or a mating bond, is it like a computer refresh where you're like, okay, system, reboot, like, on to find another mate? Like, I don't know. I don't know if you knew that, and it was just something that I had overlooked.
I don't know specifically, but I have, just from the genre and the experience in the genre, I would have to say that no, it's not like a reboot.
And then what if you're mated to two people? Like, what if Elaine is both Azriel and Lucian's mate?
That's the thing. There's only one.
She could, okay.
Yeah, unless
they can't, they can't be mated to the same person, is what I mean.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, unless Sarah really throws us for a loop and does a nice throuple situation.
No. Well, poor Elaine. She can't even. Elaine.
It's just the TikTok. Look how big it is. I'm gonna die. That's okay. We're here for a good time, not a long time.
The poor girl, she doesn't even know what pleasure in that sense probably means, like, not even with herself.
Yeah. So, unless Sarah is throwing us a throuple situation, which, here for it. I have no complaints about that.
I mean, she threw out the one chapter in Silver Flames that was supposed to be a three-way.
Yep. So unless she's doing something like that, where it could be like a 2-mate situation, you do only get one. You do only get one mate. I'm not going to spoil Throne of Glass for you, but yeah, you only get one. And in this world, it sounds like you can reject the mating bond, but I feel like it would still be there. You're just not acknowledging it. You're not living with it, because we know that Lucian has accepted it. He's all in.
Since ACOMAF.
Right.
He was just like, that's my mate.
That's my mate. But Elaine hasn't. So Elaine rejecting it didn't dull Lucian's feelings at all. Like, he still struggles with it. And unless she accepts that, he will struggle with that for the rest of his life.
But what if she denounces the mating bond? Will he still struggle?
Yeah.
Oh, he will.
Like, because he's already accepted it.
Oh.
It's like if you
a super unrequited love thing.
I'm going to use the analogy of getting tattoos. So if you and your best friend decide to go get best friend tattoos, right? And you go first and you get your best friend tattoo, and then your best friend decides they don't want one, you still will always have a best friend tattoo, even if the other friend doesn't. And you can't easily get rid of it. And even if you did try to get rid of it, it would be incredibly painful.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good analogy.
Yeah, I just came up with that. Look at me.
You're so profound.
What can I say? Good with thinking on the fly. But that is the best way that I could explain, as far as I understand it, the mating bond situation that Sarah has created in this book specifically, or in this world specifically. And I think that could also circle back around to, does Elaine know that? Does she know that? I mean, she is a seer as far as we know. Is she aware of the pain that she's causing Lucian? And if she is...
Oh, I always forget about the seer part of it all.
Right. Because if she is aware of all this pain that she's, inflicting on Lucian, and of course it is her choice to accept it or not, but like, damn, that sucks. It kind of puts her in a pickle if she doesn't want Lucian, but she knows that Lucian's suffering. I don't, it's just a really shitty situation there.
Then like, ooh, you could argue about the more and knowing the suffering, but not just being like, look, here's my sitch.
Yeah.
And I love more I want to be best friends with. Like, I want nothing more than to have Morgan in my life. So, I mean, Laura's my Morgan.
Aw, that's very sweet. I'm not gay though. So
very, very married.
I think that's important.
Oh yeah.
Like more struggling with her sexuality and like leading as on is also very shitty, but I think that is a whole other kind of episode.
Yeah.
To kind of discuss, because then, that's a whole other topic.
Especially considering next week we'll be focusing on ACOWAR.
Yes, exactly that. The last thing that I kind of want to bring up in regard to Silver Flames is going back to Elaine, and Elaine being a seer, and Elaine dropping that bomb about how, exactly what I'm going to say.
It's the Cassian thing.
When Cassian was like, it'll take more than that to kill me. And Elaine just goes, no, it won't.
I saw there's spiral on TikTok this week, or maybe it wasn't a spiral, but one specific person, she goes, everybody's freaking out. She goes, it's quite possible. Like, nobody's died yet. We're, 3.5 books in. Who's to say this isn't the book that Cassian dies?
Right.
Like, I'm not familiar. I know people die in Throne of Glass. I don't know who. I know there's emotional wreckage happening. I love Cassian. Like, he's one of the Bat Boys. I love him so much. I will be distraught if he dies.
Right. Because we do have Amryn technically dying and Rhys technically dying, but they are brought back to life.
And Feyre died in book 1, and she was
Feyre died, and they're all brought back to life. They're all brought back different, it's and then if you compare that to Crescent City, which has devastating death, and then Throne of Glass, which also has completely earth-shattering, devastating deaths that shape the characters.
Which would also be really shitty if Cassian dies as soon as Nesta starts getting her redemption arc, to get that taken away from her again, just like her relationship was like, oh my gosh, my dad is back. Like, maybe there's some semblance of something we can develop. Everything that kind of gets laid in front of her keeps just fucking... It's like, no, you know what? There goes the walls again. Bye, Nesta.
It's also worth mentioning that if that does happen, I wonder if that would make her even more committed to being some sort of like badass warrior, Illyrian queen.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's what it would take. I don't know. This is all speculation, of course.
Like, that's her trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Her ordeal.
Well, it was her ordeal on the battlefield too, where she released the power she didn't realize she had when Cass was being tortured and throwing her body. Like, when the king of Hybern was like specifically going after them, she raged and unleashed that power that everyone knew it was just like bubbling under the surface, but they didn't know what it was going to take for her to explode the way she did.
Right. Final thoughts. Do we have final thoughts?
I'm excited. I think my biggest takeaway is I'm excited to be home, to see everybody again, to understand the direction of where these characters are going to go, or like the growth that we may or may not see. I think that's probably the best way to unpack everything. What about you?
I'm very excited. I'm excited to figure out what makes Nesta tick and to see her journey. But I have to be really honest, I am so much more excited for Az's book, because Big Daddy Az is my boy, and I want to get through this book and then see where it goes. I'm excited to see where it goes, because we know that we're done with Rhys and Feyre. Like, they are the background characters now. This is these are other characters like picking up the story and running with it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And in that vein, I know that we both have ordered different hard copies of this book so that we can get the extra stories in the back.
Multiple, not like a book exchange, like, oh, I'll have the Az, you'll have the Reese. No, we both have Azrael coming. We both have, and I panic bought everything because Laura would either be on a plane or she'd be going somewhere. And I would just say, I bought us two. They're coming here. They're coming to my apartment. Everything I bought was duplicate. Oh, Sarah has all of my money. She and the bookish community on Etsy. Gaga canceled all of her concerts. Like, that's where my money is going now. Cons are canceled. Everything is canceled. I am stuck in my house because of COVID, and it's, as we all should be, wear a mask. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to Az's book, but for me, for Silver Flames, I'm just like Reese would take Feyre any way he can. If she was like, I just want to be for fun, or I want it to be more, like, I'm just like, I will take what is it, Oliver Twist, like, Mole, please. Like, I will take anything from Sarah.
It's true. And especially that we know how, well, I mean, excluding Frost and Starlight because it doesn't seem like her, but we know that Sarah writes quality books. We know that she loves these characters, and we know that we're going to get several books out of this series.
Yeah.
She always writes more than she should.
Thank God for creativity.
Yeah, thank God for creative people. It is really something.
Wait, since we touched on all of our major boys today, and FMK, Reese, Az, or Cassian. And Cassian.
You're asking me specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying, if you haven't caught on with our conversation since the first episode, I already know my order.
I know my order. So, okay, no, because I want to be a ruler, so I would fuck Az, marry Reese, and kill Cassian.
I know, me too. I still can't I just do like fuck marry? I know that's not the rules of the game.
It's something. If I were a better person, and if I were less ambitious and less of a Slytherin, then I would marry Az, because I feel like he is just perfect for me. But I would really like to rule a territory and kind of just own that. So I have to marry Reese to do that. And yeah, and I'm not really interested in a war general. Like, I love Cass. He's funny. He's sexy, but that's not my thing.
And I'm not, even now, like, I'm not like, oh, a man in uniform. I'm like, yeah,
like, yeah, I could, I can leave that. But I think that's a really good way to leave off on this episode. And I have to say, next week, as we mentioned, we will be talking about A Court of War and Ruin. So that is ACOWAR. To really tie it into this episode, when we talked earlier about having sex in really weird and unusual places, we will be touching on the weird and unusual place that Reese and Feyre decide to have sex in ACOWAR, which is, of course, surrounded by dying soldiers in a tent that is not soundproofed on the battlefield.
But I get it,
weird,
too.
It's awkward.
No, it is. We'll talk about that next week.
It is something that the fandom has an issue with, and that and more will be discussed next week. So make sure you tune in.
Tune in and feel free to check out our Instagram page, where we'll continue to post things that we discuss, reads, art that we love sharing. That is ACOFAE Podcast, ACOFAE Podcast on Instagram. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.